Okay, everyone, let's grab our seats. It's 8:30 p.m. My name's Ron. I'm an alcoholic. Got a couple great announcements here. This group has an ongoing commitment every Sunday night at 7 p.m. It's an in-treatment center in Quakertown. If you'd like to be a speaker, we need a couple speakers each Sunday night. Be a great way to get involved and be of service. We donated last 3 months 150 big books thanks to your contributions, donations, and support. And we just ordered another 100. We just got here, so we're carrying this message behind to the people that need it the most in the front lines. And thanks again for all your support over the years, especially. And this is amazing. Every 7 years, Saturday Night falls on a New Year's Eve, and this year, it's been 7 years since our last one. We throw on a big bash. We got some great speakers. I got Robbie W. out of Wildwood and Chris S. out of Jersey, and a whole host of people. The times and the actual itinerary will be put together towards the end. But it was an amazing time last time. We had a lot of people here, so throw that in your calendar now. New Year's Eve right here. Anyway, let's have some fun. What do I always forget? If you have any flyers for any other meetings or anything going on, please put them on the back table. We like to keep everybody connected, and we do have a Facebook page. Probably most of you are aware of that. But we'd like to know of anything that's going on in AA, in and around, up and down the East Coast that people can get involved with. I always say, if you're bored in AA, you're doing it wrong. In this high-tech world, there's so many ways to connect the dots. So sometimes you can be of service just, showing other people that, hey, there's things going on here, there, anniversaries. I always say, I love anniversary meetings. It's free food and a half-decent speaker. It's like Saturday night here, right? Anyway, here's our chairman of the month, Nick. Let's welcome him in.
Welcome to the Conscious Contact Speaker Group of Alcoholics Anonymous. My name is Nick and I am an alcoholic. Amen. This is a 1-hour speaker meeting that meets every Saturday evening at St. Paul's Lutheran Church, 301 North Main Street in Doylestown, Pennsylvania. Food and fellowship starts at 8 p.m. Speaker at 8:30. The business meeting for this group meets every Saturday at 7 p.m. to 7:30 right here. Please come early and join us. The purpose of this group is to provide a consistent message of hope and recovery through God reliance and service to others through the practice and teaching of the 12 steps. We record all speakers so that others may benefit from their message of recovery. If you wish not to be recorded, simply ask. This is an open meeting of Alcoholics Anonymous. The group would like to welcome everyone, especially newcomers. Is there anyone new or from out of town that would like to introduce themselves with their first name? All right, well, welcome to everybody. The Conscious Contact Speaker Group encourages sponsorship with anyone with working knowledge of the 12 steps and is willing to sponsor. Please raise your hands. Are there any announcements for the good of AA? All right. Our sister group is a big book study meeting that meets every Thursday at 7:30, just up the street at Salem Church on Court Street, in Doylestown. Coffee is on at 6:15. We have meeting lists and big books on easy turns. Please see me or any home group member after the meeting. If you cannot afford a big book, the Conscious Contact Speaker Group will give you one at no charge. Anyone willing to make donations for the purchase of big books and CDs to help those that can't afford them can put donations in the jar on a table marked Big Book and CD Donations. All CDs are available free of charge. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, the Conscious Contact Speaker Group of Doylestown, Pennsylvania, and our Facebook group. Subscribe and share. You can find our speakers there. Join our Facebook page to keep informed and share upcoming events and meetings. And now with that, we have Katie to come up and read the AA Preamble.
Hi, I'm Katie. I'm an alcoholic. The AA Preamble. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength, and hope with each other that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is the desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not aligned with any sect, denomination, politics, organization, or institution. It does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. I have asked Kara to come up and read the AA 12 Steps of Recovery.
Good evening, everybody. My name's Carol, and I'm an alcoholic. Hello. The AA 12 Steps of Recovery. Number 1, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. Number 2, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Number 3, made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood Him. Number 4, made a searching and fearless more inventory of ourselves. Number 5, admitted to God, to ourselves, and to another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. Number 6, we're entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. Number 7, humbly asked Him to remove our shortcomings. Number 8, made a list of all persons we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. Number 9, made direct amends to such people wherever possible, except when to do so would injure them or others. Number 10, continued to take personal inventory when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. Number 11, sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood Him, praying only for knowledge of His will for us and the power to carry that out. And number 12, having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, we tried to carry this message to alcoholics and to practice these principles in all our affairs. Now Nick's going to come up again. Thank you.
The 7 tradition. Every AA group ought to be fully self-supported, inclining outside contributions. At this time, we'd like to pass the baskets. We have no dues or fees, but we do have expenses. And this group provides many services, and your donations cover food, rent, big books, CDs, events, and workshops. There is absolutely no smoking on church property. Please take a moment to silence all cell phones, and please try to limit movement during the meeting to avoid distractions. Now, to introduce the speaker, a good friend of the Conscious Contact Speaker Group. Tonight we have Doug P. from the Working with Others group out of Netcong, New Jersey.
Hey everybody, my name is Doug Peganek and I am an alcoholic. And because of the grace of God, the actions that I've learned to take here in Alcoholics Anonymous, the sponsorship, I have not had a drink since November 3rd of 1979, and I'm really happy about that. Now, I was wondering if there's new people in the room tonight, and because I like to think about this, is that when I got to Alcoholics Anonymous, I went through this debate: am I really an alcoholic or not? And what the people told me there is, well, if you're sitting there wondering if you're an alcoholic or not, you are. And then in this book, this handy little book here, beginning of chapter 4, We Agnostics, has 2 very clear questions, to determine whether you're an alcoholic or not, And I mean, you fact checkers can clear this up after the meeting, but it's something along these lines: is that if when you start drinking, you can't stop the amount that you intake, and when you stop, you can't stay stopped. Those are the only 2 questions that you need to answer in order to qualify as whether you're an alcoholic. And if you're an alcoholic, you might want to try this thing called Alcoholics Anonymous, because I can tell you it works really, really well. My experience in Alcoholics Anonymous I just can't say enough about it. Even though, in those early years you're kind of befuddled and you're wondering why things aren't working. But if you go back and look at how it works, the reason I was having trouble with the program of Alcoholics Anonymous is because there's a little line in there that says, about people that are constitutionally incapable of being honest with themselves. And I've thought about that a lot, what I thought that meant, that there was just something wrong with you, and that you're wired funny. But what it really is, in my mind, is that it's just my ego. The thing that blocks me off from this thing called Alcoholics Anonymous is that I came in here with a whole bunch of ideas on how to stay sober and how to live. I didn't come up with ideas on how to stay. I came in here on how life should be lived. And when I stopped drinking, I kept those old ideas. I didn't change them, And if you don't change those old ideas and you try to apply the principles of Alcoholics Anonymous to your life, the 12 steps, there's a conflict. You know, you're not going to make much progress because it can't be both ways. It's going to have to be one or the other. So let me go back to November 3rd, 1979, and that was the day of my last drink. And what had happened to get me to that point was that I was never a bar drinker. You know, I was always a car drinker. You know, I drank most of my alcohol driving a car, and what I discovered when I got to Alcoholics Anonymous, even though it was very evident to the rest of the world, is that I don't do well when I drink and drive. I do very poorly, and I had a lot of trouble in that area of my life. In fact, it was probably, you know, one of the key factors to getting me here eventually, because of the emotional and mental turmoil that went along with that. So I'm going to start with telling you just a little bit about my history, my journey here, my journey before I picked up my first drink. Was I'm raised on a farm out in the middle of Kansas, and I got 3 brothers and 3 sisters who were raised Catholic. My mom and dad are both still alive. They're in their upper 80s and great people. I love them to death, both of them. Just so you know that I love my father more than my mother because he did not make my resentment list. That's the only thing I can go on with that. And I thought I had a pretty good childhood, you know, poor, dirt farmers, didn't care, you know, didn't know any better, you know. So I get to the age of 13, and 13 was a magical year for me. 2 things I discovered. I discovered, you know, the effects of alcohol and girls at about the same time, and man, that was a bad combination. I learned a lot about that, but I'm 13 years old and I'm working on this farm. My father and my uncles and my grandfather, and you know, we work hard. My ancestry is Czechoslovakian, so those boys and girls know how to drink over there. And so we work hard and we drink hard. And so at the age of 13, I start drinking, and when I start to drink, there's something that happens to me the minute I take a drink. It's like, I want more. I want to continue to drink until I'm drunk. And I don't know why that is, but that's just the way I always operated. So if they came up and they had a 6-pack of beer, and there was, you know, not enough to go around, they'd give my cousin and I a beer to split. And I don't know about you, but I never took a half a beer. Never. You know, I said, you drink it, because I knew what would happen. Even at the age of 13, I knew the minute I took that drink, it was going to set something off inside of me that says, I got to have some more. And if I didn't have a ready supply, and listen, we're pretty good, you know. In my teens, I figured out where the bootlegger was and how to get booze and how to talk to people to buy me hard liquor. At age of 14, I'm now moved up from drinking a little old Milwaukee beer and Pabst Blue Ribbon to some Southern Comfort, you know. And that experience with Southern Comfort was, I drank Southern Comfort like I drank beer, and you shouldn't do that. It's dangerous. And my cousin and I were 14 years old. We're out working on the farm after schools, and we drink a little bit out of the top of those pints. He had a pint of Old Charter, I had a pint of Southern Comfort, and we just drank a little bit, and man, we got buzzy. Oh, we were buzzed. And it was a Wednesday night, and we had to go to CCD, and so we end up in class, and we were so unruly. They took us out of, you know, because we were, you know, obviously freshmen or sophomores. They moved us into the 2nd grade class because that's how we were conducting ourselves, because we were just drunk, you know, on that much. The next night we go back and we decide we should finish it, and we drank the whole bottle. And I'm surprised that neither one of us died from alcohol poisoning that night. And I had a blackout, my first blackout, and I was terribly sick. And I remember the reaction of my family the next day. It was sort of like this, don't do that anymore. And I said, oh, okay, I won't do that anymore. And I never did. I never drank Southern Comfort again, you know, because if I smelt it, I wanted to throw up. simply because it was a bad experience. And so I'm in high school and I'm working my way through the process of what you do, whatever it is you do in high school. And I'm not very athletic. I'm not very academic. You know, what I want to do is I want to get a nice car. I want to get a nice girl, and I want to drink. You know, and unfortunately for me, I always reverse that order. You know, I got me a beer first. You know, I got me something to drink, and whenever I do that, then the girl in the car would just go out the window. It's like I would lose interest in that very quickly because I wanted to focus on that drink. And that, you know, wasn't until I got to Alcoholics Anonymous that I began to understand that phenomenon of, you know, why is it that I chase that thing that is so elusive, that makes me feel okay, and why do I overshoot the mark? What's wrong with me? You know, that was a question that plagued me until I ended up in Alcoholics Anonymous. What is wrong with me? So So here's what, if you're a drinker, what you strive to be when you're in high school is the best guy to drink with, you know, because that's all I got going for me. And anytime somebody wanted to party, they'd call me, you know, and I would go drink with them. We drank in cars a lot, but I would go drink with them. And one night I'm running around with a couple guys and a young gal in my car. And we just been down to Bootlegger, and I'm 16 years old, and I got this case of quarts of Budweiser sitting on the front seat between me and my buddy. And I decided that it'd be a good idea that I'm in this little town where I went to high school. And you know, I come from a town of 100 people, so it's really small out there. And I decided it'd be fun for me to do donuts on the main street. And I'm doing donuts on the main street, and somebody says, "There's the sheriff." And I said, "Oh, I better go." And I pointed my car out of town, and I got up to 110 miles an hour, slowed down, made a turn, lost the cop, damaged my car a little bit, threw all the beer out the window, which really broke my heart. And I got in a little trouble with the parents, you know, because, you know, what happened, because my cousin had seen what had happened, and he reported it back to the family, and he's the same one that I drank with. He's been after me ever since we had that drunk together. And then they knew that I'd been in trouble with the law indirectly. And I come from a town in a county where the sheriff is elected, and it's so small, our community, he knows everybody. So on that day, what happened is that I started this thing that followed me all the way into Alcoholics Anonymous. I started looking over my shoulder. You know, when are they going to come and get me? You know, I'm sitting there waiting for him to come and get me, because I broke a lot of laws that night. And more importantly, I endangered a lot of lives that night, and I didn't even recognize it. So I get out of high school. I'm 17 years old when I graduate high school. It's 1974. In 1974, those of you that were either around or studied history know that in 1974 that the Vietnam War was kind of winding down, and I had a choice of what I was going to do when I graduated from that high school. And the three choices were this. Number one, go to the military. Second one was go to college. Third one was to stay on the farm and work. And military sounded interesting, but I had a couple of relatives that had been in the service, and they said that they give a lot of orders there, and I don't like people giving me orders much. And the second one, going to college, I really liked that one. I liked it a lot because I'd gone up to the college with my cousin, who was a few years older than me, and I went to some of the parties he was having at his house. And you know, they had kegs of beer, and they bring out these big old wash tubs and pour booze in them, and then you're just supposed to dip your cup and drink, and imagine that in COVID. And I thought, and there was girls. Oh, there was girls. And I thought, you know what? I want to do that college thing, you know, because that's what I thought college was a keg of beer and a girl. And my father, he's a very prejudiced man, I believe, or he discriminates, because he paid for my sister to go to college, but he wouldn't pay for me. And it's because I'm a male and I can work on the farm. Now my sister works on the farm, and he still owes me an education. Anyway, just kidding. And so when he told me I had to pay for it, I said, well, I'm going to have to work. And so I decided I would stay on that farm and work. I'm 17 years old, and the first thing I want to do is I want to buy a new car, you know. And because here's my thinking at that point. I'm going to buy me a car. I'm going to give me some nice clothes. I'm going to get me a nice girl, you know. And so I set out to do that. I get the car, you know, and it was about 1974, and John Travolta had come out, you know, with Saturday Night Live, and had those big old lapelled shirts, and, you know, I got me some of that stuff, and it looks kind of corny out in a cornfield, but it was, you know, I thought it was happening. And here's what happened, is that I never got the girl. I mean, and here's part of the problem that I had with developing. I didn't date much in high school, and here's why: is that when I 16 years old, there was this girl. Her name was Barbara Oxman, and I love Barbara. I mean, as far, you know, at 16 years old, what are you attracted to? You know, she just looked good, and then she was also sweet. You know, I did get close enough to see she had a pleasant disposition, but. I went out with her one time, and when you're getting ready to go out on a date with somebody for the first time, you have to prepare, and I prepared. I had quite a few beers to drink before I picked her up, and then I picked her up, and we went to this little place in one of the towns that was called Izzy's, and it was a place where if you were 16 years old and you could reach the bar, they would sell you a beer. And so we're sitting in this in a little booth, me and her and another couple, and we're drinking beers, and I'm talking. All of a sudden, I just puke on her, and that was my last date with Barbara. Because drinking always got in front of everything else, and that's the point. Is that so now I got this new car, and I got my shiny John Travolta, you know, suit, and I'm going to go out and there's no discos in Kansas, so but I'm going to go out and I'm going to find me, you know, and what happens? I drink, and I drink past the point of caring, you know, and so in October of 1974, I turned 18. And I joined the Knights of Columbus. Because my father was a member of the Knights of Columbus, and my grandfather, and my uncles were members. But I did not join because of that. I didn't join because I thought I was going to do nightly acts. I joined because it was the only place in the state of Kansas on a Sunday afternoon at the age of 18 that I could buy a whiskey sour. And if I joined that group, I had access to that club. And that's what I did. And so farming season, you know, winter things kind of slow down. And so as we rolled into October, November, December, I start running with a bunch of guys, and we go down to the Knights of Columbus, because see, since I'm a member, I can bring in the Baptists with me, you know, and so we're going down there, we're playing poker, we're drinking whiskey sours, and the place closes at 9. At 9 o'clock, you got to get out. And so what we would do is that when they kick us out, we'd get in our cars and we'd drive over to the next town, which was just probably 20 miles away, and go find something to eat. And we'd been doing this for several weeks. You know, this was our pattern that winter. And it was on February 9th, 1975. I'm driving. And I'm driving the way that I typically do when I'm drinking. It's like as fast as I can. And I got my buddy with me, and we're racing the other guys. You know, we got two cars, and we're racing highway going 100, 110 miles an hour. And we came to a bridge, which I knew was there, but the bridge went up like this and then came back down. And it was really windy that night too. And I'm not blaming anybody on anything except that I was driving way too damn fast. When I got to that bridge, the car went airborne. And when the car came back down, it did not come down on its wheels. It came down on the right front fender. and the car rolled end over end. The engine was thrown out of the car. My friend was thrown out of the car, and the car rolled on top of him and killed him. And they came and pulled me out of the car, and I walked to the ambulance. 3 days later, I was released from the hospital. Now, what happened in that hospital is really important, I think, too, because something happened in there that I didn't know how important it was until I was sober 20 years. And I'm in that hospital, and this gentleman walks in. His name is Gary, and Gary came to me. He was about 25 years old. Part of the reason he was there was because it was his property that it was an alfalfa field. My car landed in, and so he came to me, and he came to me to talk to me about Jesus. And at that moment in time, my thoughts about Jesus were that I don't think he really cares too much, because if he did, I wouldn't be in this set of circumstances that I'm in. And so I dismissed him as nicely as I could, and I tucked that away. So I get to that hospital, and what happens over the next 5 years is just downward spiraling alcoholism, drinking, and all the things that go along with when you're not drinking, mostly harming other people. That's what happens to us if we don't treat our alcoholism. We'll continue to drink, and we'll continue to harm people. And I continue to harm people, not directly, but indirectly. And I was afraid this little town of 100 people, I hid in the doorways and people came down the road because I didn't want them to see me. I tried to go to college because I was facing vehicular homicide charges, and I found out, again, sober 20 years, why I never got prosecuted, but it just surprised me, because in this day and age you wouldn't walk on a set of circumstances like that. And I walked and I go to college thinking that, I'll change my ways. So I go to college, and for the first semester I didn't drink. I studied, and I actually got some pretty good grades. Well, come January of 1976, I got word that the family had settled all claims regarding that accident. And I just started to drink, because the monkey was off my back. See, alcoholism is so powerful. It didn't care about those other people. What it cared about is, when can I drink again safely, And the day came, and I could drink again safely. And what happened is that before the end of that semester was over with, I flunked out of college. And I go back to that farm, and I spent 1.5 years there just making everybody's life miserable, just miserable. Then I moved to Manhattan, Kansas, commonly referred to as the Little Apple. And I got a job there working in a lumber yard. And I hope that clock is right back there, because this is great. I'm getting a lot of stuff in here. So I get a job in the lumber yard, and I'm thinking, well, now I'm gonna try to clean it up here a little bit. I'm gonna try to not do what I was doing back there in the old hometown. And the first night when we clocked out, there was a case of Budweiser on the counter. And I'm not the type of guy that can just walk past that. And so I started to drink, and what that led to was this: and I'm raised Catholic, and because of that, there's things called the 10 Commandments. And listen, I'm checking them off, and I'm not intentionally checking off the 10 Commandments of breaking them. I'm not trying to achieve a goal here. It's just that I'm just messing up. And so I ended up sleeping with one of the gals that worked there who was married. I'm going, damn it, I broke another one, And then it's another time where you sit and you look over your shoulder. When's he coming for me? I got the county sheriff looking for me, and I'm sure that her husband's going to be looking for me pretty soon once he finds out what I've been doing. And then I start stealing from my employer. So I ended up going back to college again, and I gave it a shot. And so here it is. It's now the fall of 1978, and I'm back in school. I'm doing fairly well because I'm mitigating or minimizing how much I drink, and I do fairly well at the end of the semester, get some fairly good grades, and so I decided, well, here's what I'm going to do, is when I say it's minimizing drinking, I remember Halloween that year. I dressed up like Clark Kent. You know, you give me a little hat and a trench coat, and what's nice about trench coats is that the pints of Bacardi rum fit nicely in the pockets. And I go to a party, and I drink, I don't know if I drank them both, but I drank a lot. And I was so drunk, and I'm surprised that I can remember this, but the sidewalk was about 3 feet wide. I couldn't stay on it, you know. It was just back and forth, back and forth. So then, end of the semester comes, and I'm at a party, and I'm bringing my Bacardi with me. I don't have a trench coat that night. And the folks in the house say, listen, why don't you give us your keys so we can take you home? I said, I'm fine. And they let me go, and I got in that car, and I'm driving back to my apartment across town, and I missed the turn. And so I had to go up and circle back. And as I'm coming back, there's a stop sign. And this is really important because this is indicative of how I've lived most of my life. And that is, I saw that stop sign and I thought this, I says, you can't tell me what to do. And I ran the stop sign and I broadsided the car. And now I'm in a set of circumstances where I had sworn I would never be in a situation again where someone was harmed as a result of my drinking and driving. And here it is, December 16th, 1978, and I'm going to jail. Because again, you know, the alky, I don't know why, but he's pretty resilient. You know, he's in car wrecks, and I walked away. The other folks, fortunately, did not die, but they were injured. And I've never understood why they did not press charges. But I got charged with DWI, and I spent the night in jail. Was released, and I went to see an attorney. And this attorney, he was kind of interesting. He read the accident report, and he says, you just need to go and plead on this one, buddy, because you're guilty. And this is what my attorney's telling me, you know. And I knew I was guilty. And so I went to the court and I pleaded, and they sentenced me to probation and took my license for a period of time. And I made a decision at that point in time. I said, here's what I'm going to do is I am not going to drink and drive again because I just have a terrible record with that. And I lasted till about the next Tuesday, you know, once I got my car back, and I decided I drank and I drove. So I made a second decision. You know, what you do when you're alcohol, you just keep lowering the bar. I said, so I'll drink and drive, but I'll drive the speed limit. That's what I'm going to do. And then the next bar is like, the only way I know how to drive when I'm drinking is full blast. You know, it's either, you know, most alkies that are drinkers and drivers, they either drive full blast or they're stopped. That's the only two speeds they know. They know nothing in between. And what happens is that they put me into this program, you know, where they're giving me some psychological evaluations, and they take the 600 question test or something like that, and they have me see somebody on a weekly basis, and that goes okay. And then I go home for the summer, you know, and the interesting thing about that summer is that there's an incident there that occurred that was very telling about my view of the world at that point in time. I got an uncle, his name is Ivan, and we're out on the farm, and I'm helping harvest wheat one more time, and I've got the attitude, you know, the attitude of a guy that's 22 years old and thinks he's smarter than everybody else. And he walks up to me and he says, hey boy, he says, and I was a little offended to call me boy, and he says, you know what your problem is? And I said, no, what? And he says, you need an operectomy. And I said, what is an optorectomy? And he says, that's when they go in and they cut the cord that runs between your eyeball and your asshole and gets rid of your crappy outlook on life. And I was shocked, and the reason I was shocked is it's true. You know, I had a terrible outlook on life. And so I muddled along and went back to college that fall, and within a very short period of time, I flunked out one more time. Within a very short period of time, they had me seeing a psychiatrist, and in a very short period of time, the psychiatrist had me on medication. The first day he met me, he says, I'd like to send you to this institution down in Newton, Kansas that would be helpful for a guy like you. And I said, no. So he prescribed me some medication, and I took the medication. And when I took the medication, he says, well, how did that work for you? And I said, it works fairly well, except when I drink, I start to cry. And his response was, oh, you drink? Now imagine this. I'm a guy that got arrested for DWI. You know, I'm a guy that's got a history. And how's come he didn't know that? You know why he didn't know that? Because I didn't tell him, you know? I wasn't planning on telling him that, but he then gave me a really good piece of advice. He said, listen, if you're going to drink, don't take the medication. And if you take the medication, don't drink. And I said, that sounds like a good idea. And I went home and I drank and I took the medication. You know, I don't know any better. And here's what it did for me is that it finished me off as far as the physical component of this. I was done spiritually. I was done emotionally. I wasn't quite done physically yet. And that finished me off because I started to vibrate, you know. I started to hallucinate. When I wasn't drinking, I started seeing things. And so on November 3rd of 1979, I'm in a car driving from Manhattan, Kansas over to Lawrence, Kansas to watch K-State play KU in a football game. And I'm with my sister and her husband-to-be at the time, and it's about 10 o'clock in the morning. And we're driving over, and as we're driving, I'm drinking. And as we get closer to the town, you know, the pills and the booze, they start to take an effect. 10 o'clock in the morning, I'm hanging out the window, I'm yelling obscenities at the KU fans. And my sister grabbed me by the shoulder, pulled me back in the car, took the bottle away from me, and she says, you've had enough. And I don't know why, but I stopped. Now here's what I do. What I would do different is if I would have known that was going to be the last time, I would have drank something different. Because I was drinking peppermint schnapps mixed with coffee. But you know what? It all gets you there. That's all that matters. It gets you there. But anyway, so she takes that away from me. And at this point, nobody in my family knows that I have succumbed to going to a nut house. And they take me home, and I let them all know, and the bed wasn't available for 11 days. And what's really interesting about those 11 days is this, that I was miserable, but drinking never crossed my mind. I heard Cliff Roach say this, and I'm sorry, not Cliff Roach, Cliff from out in California, he's deceased now. He said that was a spiritual experience. The fact that on November 3rd I was drinking, and then on November 4th, I had no desire to drink. What happened there? Because I always wanted to drink. Even after I was done. And I had begun my surrender. But I think what follows now is what becomes really important about a surrender, is that there's got to be follow-up. Now, so they send me off to this mental institution. And I remember standing in the foyer of my mother's home and saying to her, 23 years old, says, what's wrong with me? The question that I've been asking myself for years, what is wrong with me? I don't feel like I fit in here. I don't feel like I'm connected to anybody. And what does a mom do in a case like that? She gives you a hug, you know, because she didn't have an answer. You know, she just wants you to be happy. So I get to this place sometime mid-November. And when I get in there, and what they start talking to me about is now because you know, you got my attention, you got me in a mental institution. It's like my first thought when I got there is, what do I have to do to stay out of here? You know, what do I have to do? And so they said, well, tell us what's going on. And so I told them, you know, trouble with drinking, car wrecks, can't make a living, can't graduate from college, it's all kinds of things. So they assess me and go, okay, you're going over this thing they call substance abuse. And I get over there, and what do they start talking about? And this guy by the name of Ted, I don't use his full name because he's deceased, and he was a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. His name is Ted Oliver. And Ted, when I met him, was sober 23 years. I was 23 years old, and I said to myself, how do you do that? How do you stay sober for 23 years? How do you not think about a drink for 23 years? And I was impressed with that. I was just impressed. And they started talking about, the principles of Alcoholics Anonymous and sponsorship and AA meetings. And my first AA meeting was inside of that institution. And when and then these people came in from the outside. And when I saw those people, they were kind of scary, I didn't know that I want what they had necessarily, because there was a guy that had been in the penitentiary, and he had a tattoo on his arm, and the tattoo was of a naked woman. And I'm going, I'm a good Catholic boy. I don't hang out with people like that. And then there was another one that had just gotten out of prison for rape. I'm going, I surely don't hang out with people like that, And then there was this couple there, they were dressed like, they were Irish, and they were dressed like leprechauns, and I thought, Jesus, I really don't want to hang out with these people. So I didn't go to AA for the rest of the time I was in that institution, but I listened, I go to the groups and stuff like that. And so my insurance runs out after 60 days, and you know what happens when your insurance runs out? They go, you're cured. And so, but Ted told me this. He says, listen, I don't think you should leave here. I think you should stay close to us, because if you go back to that farm or you go back to that college town, more than likely you're going to drink again. And I said, well, listen, the only thing I really care about is that I don't want to end up back in here. How do I stay out of the mental institution? And he told me I think one of the, in the book it talks about the spiritual toolkit, that's laid at our feet. He laid it at my feet, and he said this. He says, here's what you do. You go to meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous, you get a sponsor, and you work steps with that sponsor. He says, I will guarantee you, if you do those three things, he says, you will never have to come back here, ever. And he was emphatic about it. And I've been doing that ever since. And he told me the absolute truth. Do those three things. And I haven't been back to mental institute. I did go back because he asked me to come back and volunteer and try to help other people, along the way. And I got a sponsor early on. And my first sponsor, his name was Gary, and he and I were working through the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous and the 12 and 12, trying to work steps. And it was kind of a what I would call a drive-by, because he would call me up and say, how you doing with step 2? I said, I'm good. And he'd say, how about, they would call me up a week or so, how about step 3? I said, I got it. He said, okay. He says, you start writing your inventory. I said, all right. So then I'm like most people that come to Alcoholics Anonymous. I have to do a lot of research first before I start writing, I got to get the Hazelden guide and the guide that got at the mental institution. And I never thought about looking in here for directions, but, and so I write this long-winded life story, and he lets me come over to his house, and I tell him that story, and I'm waiting for him to throw me out of his house because I told him things that I would not tell a Catholic priest nor a psychiatrist. And he didn't throw me out of his house. What I did then was I made a decision. I made a decision based on a decision. And that decision was that between steps 5 and 9 are several more steps. I'm not going to work them. I'm not going to work those steps because I'm not making amends. I am not. I got this guy dead in the grave. I am not making amends. I don't know how I'm going to do that. So I don't. And I go from step 5 to step 12. And I start sponsoring guys. And here's what happens when you've only worked 5, 6 steps, is that when you're working with somebody and you get them to past step 5, you go, you're on your own. Don't know what to do with you, You don't say it out loud, but in here, it's like, I haven't done the work. Back page 164, it says, you can't transmit something you haven't got. And I didn't have it. So I stayed sober, actively involved with groups and intergroup and GSR and all that activity just kept me moving forward, but on the inside I'm dying. So I did what I thought seemed to make sense. I'm going, well, you know what? I'm not happy, so why don't I get married? This side story. Brother-in-law and sister-in-law celebrated their 38th wedding anniversary this past week, and so I'm looking for this little thing I can send to them, and this is Katharine Hepburn wrote this. She said, whenever there's a murder, they always investigate the spouse first. She says that's all you need to know about marriage. So anyway, I distracted myself, I'm sorry. So I get married, and we moved back to Manhattan, Kansas. And when I made that move, it was a powerful event, and I didn't know it at the time. And I met my current sponsor. His name happens to be Gary too. And what Gary did is he invited me over to his house, and we took this big book, and he walked me through it. He got me on my knees and prayed in his basement, and he's a Baptist, and that scared me, because I don't hang out with Baptists, and I always thought there was an inner circle in Alcoholics Anonymous, that you guys that seemed to be happy had something going on that the rest of us didn't know about. And I was trying to figure out how to get into the inner circle. And when I was in his house that morning, and we're doing that prayer in the base, I'm thinking, this might be it. What's going to happen is the closet doors are going to fly open. There's going to be a bunch of Baptists in long black cloaks, and they're going to be toting Bibles and say, you're saved. And none of that happened. What had happened is he sent me home, I wrote that inventory, I came back to him, I told him what that was in that inventory. And then he did something. He says, now we're going to do steps 6 and 7. And when we got to step 7, he got me back on my knees in his house. And I said a prayer. And what's important about that to me today is that between step 3 on my knees and step 7 on my knees, I started to trust another human being. I believe that he had, his only intention was to carry the message of Alcoholics Anonymous. He wasn't looking for anything from me. He just wanted to carry that message. And so I trusted it. So now we're step 8. And I got the list. We go through it, and he goes, okay, we're going to knock out some of these easy ones first. He said, go back to those guys you were stealing from and give them the money you owe them. I said, what? I'm a college student. I ain't got any money. He says, you want to stay sober? Okay, all right. So I got the money. I went to the place, and here's what's amazing about this amends is that when I went there, I called. It was a small mom and pop shop, and I called on them and see if I could get in to see him. And the father wasn't there, but the mother was there, and she said, yeah, come on in. And I sat down, and I told him while I was there, I said, listen, I'm a member of Alcoholics Anonymous. I'm here because when I was working for you, I stole some things from you, and I valued what I told him what it was, and what we agreed upon a value, and they asked a few questions about the circumstances. And the only reason I could do that because the guy that I was stealing with was dead. He drank himself to death, and so I was able to talk about that set of circumstances. And here's what happened. I offered her the money, and she says, I don't want your money. And then she looked past me, and she goes, tell me more about Alcoholics Anonymous. And the reason she looked behind me was because her son was sitting behind her. And I used to drink with that guy, and he's a bad drunk. And so she was looking to help him. And I don't know what came of that. I ran out of there as fast as I could with the money because they didn't want it. And I went and I told my sponsor that they didn't want my money. And he says, well, not your money. You got to, here's your choice. Buy big books or give it to the charity of your choice. I chose to buy big books. And he says, get a calendar, keep track. So I did. Did that on a couple of amends that I couldn't make directly. They were indirect amends, and I took care of it that way. I was able to actually, sober 5 years, walk into the life of my friend who had died, and have a conversation with his father and his brother. And that conversation went something like this: is that his mother would not see me, which I don't blame her. there's nothing I could do to bring that guy back, but I would change places, and I would spend the rest of my life in Alcoholics Anonymous trying to be helpful to other people. And they were forgiving people, and I went on. And so I'm going to jump forward because that's important, this aspect of it. I walked around in Alcoholics Anonymous from the time I was sober 5 years. But the other thing, good thing happens. Like, I went back to college. I calmed down. I started working with other guys, and when I got to step 5, we went on to step 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, because I now had something that I could convey to these guys. So I'm, I was able to finish college, and then we ended up in New Jersey in 1987, and I told my sponsor, he says, man, AA seems a little bit different over here than it was back at the old home group, and he said, well then, here's what you're going to do. He says, you're going to create the fellowship you crave. Took it out of the book. And I said, what do you want me to do? And he says, sponsor guys. He says, get a bunch of guys to sponsor and then start a meeting. And that's what I did. Started a meeting in 1988. And so I'm going through this process. I go back and get another degree because you got to have a degree, so you get more money. And but I'm dying on the inside. I'm helping. I got a list of guys that I sponsor, guys and gals. Back in the day, I'd sponsor anybody, just because I had this ego thing going on, and recognizing today, that that's what it was. And though I was mechanical about it, I was very mechanical about working the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, but I really didn't care, because I was still cut off from God. And here's why I was cut off from God. Sober 20 years after all this activity, the marriage falls apart, my home group splits, I'm just in disarray. The only area in my life that has a little bastion of life left in it is my workplace, and that wasn't problematic. And so I'm sober 20 years, and I decided to take this trip, and I go out to Kansas, and I've been to my friend's grave a number of times. I'm trying to resolve this thing, and what am I holding on to here? And it becomes apparent. I'm in a meeting in Great Bend, Kansas. I think it was a Saturday morning, and there's a guy there by the name of Bob, and Bob was notorious for quoting the Bible, And so I'm telling Bob my tale of woes before the meeting, and Bob says to me, he says, well, just remember this. He says, all things work for the good of God. I says, thanks, Bob. And I left, and I went to the house of the farmer who came to my room when I was 18 years old. I wanted to seek him out. And I got there, and he had just left to haul hay somewhere. He didn't know I was coming, but his wife was there. And I sat down with her, and we had a conversation. And she had told me some things about that night for them, how they perceived it, and it was totally different than the way I perceived it. And what it did is it opened up a door. It's like, of the little thing that it says in our big book that I had been doing. Because when that guy was in my room, when I was 18 years old, here's the decision I made. I made a decision that I did not deserve to be happy because somebody died as a result of my actions. I made that decision, and it was a conscious decision, and I brought that into the marriage. I brought it into every aspect of my life. I don't deserve to be happy. And when I went to that house and I had that conversation, I walked away from there. And I came back, and I grabbed this book, and I went to that famous page, 63. And I think it's 63. Did they move it? No, it's 62. See, they did move it. It says this. This is the how and why of it all. Or this is the how and why of it. First of all, we had to quit playing God. And you see, when I made a decision that I didn't deserve to be happy, who am I to say that? Whether I deserve it or don't deserve it. It's not up to me. But that's what I had done. And when I realized that, and I stopped, he became my father. I was his children. He's a principal. We're his agents. And I love what it says at the top of the next page. He says, when we took such a position, all sorts of remarkable things followed. And I was lit up. I mean, I fell in love. I've always loved Alcoholics Anonymous because it saved my life. But I don't know how much I love the people in it. You know, even though Alcoholics Anonymous is people, I don't know that I was making connection with other human beings because of that little thought, I don't deserve to be happy. And when you remove that, now all of a sudden the door's open and you can have relationships with other people. And I can say today that my life is pretty full. I have I have a wonderful wife. She was a widow. She had 3 kids. I didn't have any kids. Good combination. It's worked out well. You know, she was good enough to let me come out tonight. Because I learned something along the way here is that, you know, my sponsor talked to me, he says, maybe we're not so spiritual if we don't take care of our family obligations. Because I'm going to tell you what, I'd be doing AA every night of the week if I didn't have a family at home. Because I love it. Because when I come to Alcoholics Anonymous, here's what happens to me is that I get connected to the God of my understanding. You know, working with others is how I get connected to the God of my understanding. Meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I love to go to meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous and remind myself that the reason I need to go to meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous is because I need to go to meetings of Alcoholics Anonymous. Just that cycle, just keep going. You know, get entrenched and do the deal. And the life that I have today as a result of trying to live on spiritual principles, you know, letting God be the guy in charge. You know, I bring God into my daily life every day. Over time, I learned how it was. You know, I pray in the morning, say, "Thy will not mine be done," and then I go out my day. I wouldn't think about it. How does that apply to my wife, my kids? How does that apply to my workplace? How does that apply to, you know, if I'm doing something fun? How does that apply? You know, because I've always been independent because you can't tell me what to do. You know, and as a result, I push everybody away and I push God out of my life. But God's in my life today, you know, fully in my life. And, you know, if it wouldn't have been for Alcoholics Anonymous meetings like this, and again, Ron, thanks for asking me, you know, to come out and talk. He sent me a note. He says, "Hey, it's been 5 years," and my thought was, oh, they need a refresher. But technically, I needed the refresher. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Let's thank Doug one more time. Thank you, sir. Our speakers come here at their own time and expense. It's customary for us to form a line, thank them formally. It means a lot to them, and to, you know, just the impact and the connection to the group and the people in it. Don't forget the meeting after the meeting. We've got a ton of cronuts over there, and hot sausages, and cheese dogs, and the world's best coffee maker, Howard. Let's give him, everybody, best coffee maker on the East Coast. He was the whole U.S. Who else we got to thank? We got to thank Andrew, who isn't even here, who takes care of all our setting up. You can give us a hand. These chairs in the front go on that rack there. And we got a nice way of closing if you care to join us. Very simple. Let's take a moment of silence. Do with it as you will. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Keep coming back. October 1st, 2024.